Good evening, and welcome to Democratic Television, a program where we discuss public affairs and current events that impact our democratic values. My name is Lisa Plawchan, and I will be your host this evening. We are in the throes of the midterm elections, and we're trying to get out the vote for all of our Democratic candidates. It is an honor to be joined this evening with Greg Mackay, our Democratic candidate for State House District 18. Welcome, Greg.
Thank you, Lisa.
Thank you for being here.
That's my honor.
Can we just begin by having you tell us a little bit about yourself, your district, and why you're running?
Sure. My name is Greg Mackay. I lived in Cedar Bluff when I was a kid. Now I live in Kingston Hills with my family. I have a wife and a daughter. I'm a real estate broker by trade. I went to high school in the district. I went to the University of Tennessee, and I'm proud to say I live there. It's a great place to live. It includes where I live, which is Kingston Hills, Kingston Woods, West Town, West Hills. We go out to Cedar Bluff. We also pick up Rocky Hills and Westmoreland Hills, and then it goes up over the hill all the way to Western Avenue in the northwest section of the district and picks up Cumberland Estates. So it's a really great district. It's a good place to live, good place to raise a family.
Yeah, that's great. And why are you running?
Lisa, I used to run the election office here. I'm the one that's responsible for setting up the early voting system that we still use. If you've been to downtown West, that was all me. No, I'm just kidding. I had a lot of help. But the thing I learned from doing that is if you want to get something done in government, you have to work with both sides. You fight on election day, you got to put aside your difference and do what's best for the community and best for the state. So that's the reason I'm running. I see so much divisiveness these days.
Yes.
There's so many, I don't see the reason that we have to make enemies of our, people that disagree with us politically. There's no reason to tweet about them, to say nicknames about them and to accuse them of things. I'd like to get back to where we sit down and honestly discuss issues with respect toward each other and try to work out a common solution.
That's great. There is a lot of divisiveness, and I think that we definitely need to come together more. So it's refreshing to hear you say that as a constituent. Can you tell me a little bit about how you differ from your opponent? We are now out of the primary where you had a Democratic opponent, and now we have the incumbent there. Tell me how you differ from him.
Well, there's three big ways. I would have voted for the governor's Insure Tennessee plan. Governor Haslam had the plan. It expands health care to 280,000 people. Nothing's free, but it was already paid for. It's paid for when you pay out of your taxes, out of the little Medicaid fund that comes out of your check every time you get paid. Other states are using that money, California, Ohio, New York, and we're not. It's costing us billions of dollars. We have rural hospitals closing. 9 of them have closed. We have 25,000 veterans that don't have any health insurance at all, and we can do better than that. And, I disagree with my opponent in this regard. I think that if Governor Haslam came up with a plan, it would be financially sound. I do trust his judgment when it comes to money matters. He knows more about it than I do, and I think my opponent. So we disagree on that. Another thing we disagree in is he's told people that we have a failed school system. I don't think our schools are perfect, but I don't think Bearden High School is a failed school. I don't think West Hills Elementary, Bearden Middle School, I don't think they're failing schools. They're really good schools. They've got great principals in place. They've got great teachers, great students. And what we need to do with public school is give them more resources. We need to pay our teachers what they deserve. We need to make sure we have the resources. And we need to expand programs that work, like the community school program. There's 16 of them here in Knox County.
Can you explain to us what that program is? What are our community schools?
I went out to Pond Gap and saw what Bob Cronick's doing out there, and I'll tell you how they do it there. They sit down, the people in the community schools program sit down with the teachers from the school, okay? There are no written guidelines or anything. They go over each child individually, and they say, well, Johnny, what they're looking for is people who children who don't have at-home support. They're going home to an empty house because their parents are working. It's not the fault of their parents. It's just they're both working.
Right.
I don't think it's a good idea to send a 9, 10, 11-year-old boy home to an empty house, especially with internet access.
No.
So what they're doing instead is keeping them at the school. They have a little snack, and then they have these things called clubs. They're not classes. Lisa, I went in there and watched. There were 9, 10, 11-year-old boys enthralled, sitting on the edge of their chair at the robot class. UT students, engineering students, had volunteered their time to come and do the robot club, and they were learning, and they were actually building robots. Okay. Then they have several more clubs that they go to that they choose, and then they have a dinner, and then their parents come pick them up 5:30, 6 o'clock. That's the kind of innovative stuff we need to be doing in our schools. We can do an entire school for about $150,000 a year, and I'd like to see that expanded.
So how many community schools did you say are in?
The Greater Schools Partnership is running, I think, 15 of them, and then Bob Cronick and the UT people are running one at Pond Gap.
Oh, wow.
So there's 16.
That's great. That sounds like a great program. I didn't know anything about that.
Well, you don't hear about it, so. But, you know, I much prefer that than turning our schools over to for-profit,
Yes.
even out-of-state companies with the charter schools, and I just don't understand vouchers. So, but
Yeah.
go check out a community school. They need volunteers. If anybody listening wants to volunteer, get a hold of Dr. Bob Cronick at UT with a K, or Greater Schools Partnership. They have people that read to them, that help with art classes. It's a really great program. It's a way to change children. Our children should be the focus of state government. Making sure that they're safe at school, making sure that they're getting a good education, making sure they got a job when they get out of school too.
Yeah,
So.
that sounds great. Once you were elected on November 6th, what are some of the public policies that you would like to affect when you're in the state legislature?
Sure. I've mentioned two of them. One of them is, of course, Insure Tennessee. We need some type of expansion of health care. The second one is improving education, and I'm a public school advocate. I want to get teachers more money, and I want to expand the community schools. Another thing I know a little bit about, I used to run the elections here, I mentioned, and I would like to serve on the committee that is looking at election security. I think that's a real issue for people. We need to be sure that, if we don't have, honest, safe elections, then what do we have? It's kind of fundamental to everything. And it's fundamental not just that we have honest and safe elections, accurate elections, but people believe that that's the case.
Right.
And for example, the machines we use now, which I had a big hand in choosing, I don't think anybody has ever hacked into a heart machine that I've heard of. And I've read all the articles I can find, and I read them back to the source, and I've never found any evidence anybody's hacked into. But I can't prove that because it's proprietary. The machine companies won't let us in to look at the inside of the machine. We just have to kind of trust them. That makes me uncomfortable. At the time, 15 years ago, when I had to choose a voting machine, they were all like that, and I think they still are. But we need to look towards something, maybe using blockchain technology, something to where there's some kind of backup that we can look back into and say, no, nothing happened to this machine. It's all clear.
Do you think that would impact voter turnout if people do you think there's some voter apathy toward not having secure voting systems? Like, do you feel that voters might feel that way?
Yeah, they think it's rigged. People say it's rigged. What's the difference? It's all the same. What's the difference? They've already decided who's going to be the winner. You hear that all the time. So that's one thing we need to battle, I think.
So, as you know, Tennessee ranks worst in the
Dismal.
country as far as voter turnout, and with your role as the administrator for the election commission, how do we change that? How do we get more people out to vote and excited about voting? Is there some education component to it? I know when I talk to voters, there's a lot of confusion about what district do I live in, when is voting day, when are early voting dates, where can I go vote? So what do you think is the solution to increasing voter turnout?
I ran the largest election in the history of Knox County. To this day, it was 2008 presidential election. More people voted in that election than have ever voted anywhere. We did a massive voter registration drive the weekend before the books closed in cooperation with the League of Women Voters. We had volunteers at every single Kroger's registering people to vote. We registered 10,000 people to vote. We had early voting sites everywhere. 75% of the people that voted in that election voted early, which was a record too. We led the country in early voting back then. So there are things that you can do administratively to increase turnout. Make uniform hours for early voting, make it less confusing. There's two things that I've read about that increase voter turnout, if you're really serious about getting more people to vote. Number one is a letter from election officials. Now, not from people running, but from election officials saying, this is where you vote, this is when you vote, this is what you're voting on. Informational stuff. Non-biased, not trying to sell you anything, just here's the information.
Just basic voter information.
Yeah. They do that in a lot of states. It can be expensive, but it works to increase voter turnout and decrease the confusion.
Mm-hmm.
The second thing that is proven to increase voter turnout is same-day voter registration. They do it in New Hampshire. None of the people running for president ever complained about it. And there are safeguards in place. You can't just walk in and say, I'm here to vote. You have to have a utility bill, some type of proof, a driver's license, some type of proof that's where you really live, because we don't want to encourage voter fraud. And there's no evidence that it does encourage voter fraud. There's 15 states that do same-day voter registration, and that counts South Dakota, where they don't have voter registration. You just go in and vote. I think in South Dakota everybody knows each other, so it's not a problem. There's only 400,000 people in the whole state, which is what we have in Knox County. So, but those three things can make a difference.
Yeah. Well, I know that we are full into getting out the vote. What type of needs do you have, and does your campaign have, and how can they learn a little bit more about your campaign and how to get involved?
Yes, thank you, Lisa. You can go to votegregmackay.com. You just got to spell Mackay right. It's M-A-C-K-A-Y. And you can volunteer there. We have a headquarters on Middlebrook Pike across from Shannondale, just up from Bearden Middle. And we're always out knocking on doors, making calls, stuff like that. So we've been doing this the old-fashioned way. I just go out and knock on doors every night, and it's really been interesting. I've learned a lot, and I've met a lot of people.
I love your Facebook posts of
yeah.
things you see
knocking on doors.
Knocking on doors.
You see some interesting stuff out there.
What's been your favorite?
Well, it was probably, what was the one about free weeds, pull your own? Was that it? Yeah, and someone had it in their flower box. So I'm kind of a gardener myself, a nursery guy, so I appreciate that. But it was a little sign that said free weeds, pull yourself. So.
And you are part of the Tennessee Victory campaign. Can you tell our audience a little bit about how that works?
Yeah, the state party is using part of my office. They've hired some field people, and they got people that are going out. And what we were finding, Lisa, was people said, well, I want to help you, but I want to help her and him. And so
other
this way they can help everybody.
Up and down the ballot,
yes.
Right?
So they're going out and they're pushing the whole ballot to undecided voters, to independent voters. And let me tell you one thing I'm running into, too, knocking on doors. We okay for time?
We're good.
Okay. I'm getting a tremendous amount of Republican support, bipartisan support. Number one, a lot of people remembered me when I was at the Election Commission, and I tried to be fair to both parties. I was fair to both parties. I appointed Republican officers, which was against the tradition, but to me it made sense. Yeah. If it's somebody that you trust, like Carl Isaiah, Carl Leonard, people like that, the Ashleys, Sue Ashley, then I made them an officer. Joyce Huddleston, there are many others that I made officers because I trusted them. They were good people, okay? We might disagree about politics, but we agreed about the importance of the process, being honest, and doing what you say you're going to do, and all these people did. And I was proud to say I did that. They remember that, so I've got a lot of people that know me that are not worried about the party lines, and they're going to vote for me. Number two, I spoke with a lady last night who asked me what party I was. I said Democrat. She said good. And she was marked on our vote builder. We know which primary they vote in. We don't know how they vote, but we know which primary. And she was marked as a Republican. She said, I'm never voting Republican again. She's just disgusted with what's going on.
Yeah.
And
you wouldn't have had that conversation unless you were standing there at the door.
That's
so
true.
Thank you for doing that hard work.
She even gave me a yard sign. So.
Well, thank you so much for your time
and
for talking
me,
with Democratic Television this evening. We will be right back with Colleen Martinez.